So the first thing I'd love to hear from you is just like a brief introduction, just who you are and what you do in your work, so that people know a bit.
Yeah, so my name is Stefan, and like on a very practical level, what I do in my work is supporting people one-on-one. So mainly longer term journeys for people to move together with me. And the other piece is a variety of workshops that I'm holding in spaces that I'm like facilitating for mixed groups, for men as well. And I'd say that like one of the centerpieces is around relationship as path. So yeah, the sort of the wisdom covered in challenging relationship situations to sort of bring that to the surface and live by it. Like that would be it in a nutshell.
Nice. Yeah, maybe I would just add for context, because that you're a father and that you're in a relationship. And it, like, I've heard so many times from you how, let's say, especially these two relationships to your partner and your child, how they've been a path for you of learning, growing, and also of informing your work.
Yeah, thank you for naming that. Yeah, so true. Like we have been spending the last few years, like my son is 4 years old now, and we've been spending the last 4 years kind of bringing him up at home, like he hasn't been attending any institution. So we've been like, it was quite a dense container to be in, because we spend so much time as a family, so much time in relationship also. And as you said, like that is just sort of my dojo when it comes to relationships, because this closeness brings up a lot, and to walk that path consciously is just a huge catalyzer for myself and my work.
And I'll also add that, like, your time that you have for your business is limited because of that, because you're very committed to spending time with your son. And I think like that's something that's really impressed me in the time that we've been working together, like how you make use of the time that you have for working on your business. Like the constraints are very real.
Yeah, thank you for naming that.
So we started working together about 5 months ago. I think we argued whether it was 4 or 5, something like this. And yeah, I'd love to hear from you, like where you were at, particularly with your work, with your business, like what was going on at that time.
So yeah, it's been something, as you said, like 4 or 5 months. I think we started somewhere in April. And one of the main threads that still is and was even more alive for me is that, like, one of the themes that I set myself for this year is just to really follow my curiosities in my work. So when we started working, there were several like different threads that I was following in terms of creating offerings. That's what I mainly remember, like this numerous threads, and with that a lot of open questions, just because of the variety of potential lanes that are available. And in that, like both huge excitement and forward movement, but also a regular sense of overwhelm when it comes to having spaces to sort of reflect and converge and figure out like what is it really that is important as a next step. Like I think that was a big piece around where I was standing.
Yeah, I can really see this image of like lots of threads that are not just like blank ideas, but that have already kind of matured to like a readiness to bring it out. But then this question of how can I do that in a sustainable way, or in a sequence also that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I mean, for the context, the previous years I've been working as a facilitator mainly for organizations. So, anything that is around like marketing or filling up retreats or sort of filling up coaching spaces that I have wasn't really an issue, because I was working for an organization like a university or the United Nations. So they kind of provided the people to work with. And my job was to work out a framework and a facilitation setting that works for that particular context, but there was no need to take care of the surroundings, the spaces, to like get participants on board. All of that was done. Yeah. And so last year, my journey started to more and more move towards freelancing with offerings that I really want to contribute, where I have this sense of like, if I attune to myself and in the co-creative relationships that I'm in, these are the things that really emerge. They were different from the facilitation work I've done before. There are some similarities, but they also meant that I needed to move out into, let's say, into the wild in terms of like taking all of the responsibility to make these spaces work. So that started last year. And now, as you said, things have matured to a point where offerings really are coming out one after another, and they feel really aligned. And yet there's so many question marks and potential lanes to take. And I think that was a moment when we picked up, or I picked up the work with you, was this question around, okay, and how to navigate that space. Like,
Nice. Could you say a few words of where you were at financially when we started working together?
Yeah. So, and that was another piece, right, that we started with, is that like very often, or at least when I was there, when we were in April, I basically didn't exactly know how to pay for all the expenses we have as a family in May. Like my partner contributes to a certain extent, but at the moment she's not taking on like a big portion of the income that we need. We kind of, throughout the last years, we shifted roles, that some time period it was her bringing in more money and I was more with my son, and the other way around. And currently we're at 50-50 roundabout. And so long story short, where I was is with this huge financial insecurity around where money is gonna flow in from for us to pay all our regular expenses for the coming month. Yeah.
So basically, what I'm hearing is that like the two things that were kind of like the things that you came into working with me with was the financial piece of like, okay, how can I like do this work in a way that it really sustains me?
Yeah.
And I guess with that, and how do I navigate the complexity of responsibilities that I hold as someone who's self-employed and who's responsible, like who doesn't live on a paycheck, but who's responsible for what's coming in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this complexity piece and the financial piece. Yeah, that rings very true.
Nice.
And in the complexity, I mean, what's the foundation to the complexity is that I get inspired rather quickly. There's things that rather quickly I get super inspired by, and then there's this tendency to move towards what I'm inspired by. And I just now, like, the laughter was having these two pieces being so clear again, that several times throughout our process, something that I really appreciated was me coming to one of our coaching sessions with like multiple ideas in various directions, and you were sitting across, and like you put out something that was really helpful for me, is like, is this still your financial target? I was like, yes. Okay, then like, what are the options that make sense to take right now if you want to follow like inspiration and hold the financial piece as well? That is something that really helped me, because I tend to then, run too quickly into multiple directions. And just being reminded of that as a sort of, adding to the direction, this question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like how you said it, because it's not an either or.
Yeah.
But it's, if I don't ask this question as well, like, well, what is my financial goal? If I don't ask that, then like the creativity and the things that pull me, they're not necessarily going to answer that question. Whereas if I add that to the curiosity, then there is at least a possibility,
Yeah.
or like I'm attuned to the possibilities that show up, that both meet this, like, oh, this is so exciting, and I can actually earn good money doing that.
Yeah. And actually what it did to me is that the financial piece got to be another like piece in the puzzle. It feels like so much of my work as a freelancer is to figure out how to put this puzzle piece together, and then put the next one together, and put the next one together. And it's often like trial and failure. And it just, for me, what it did is that I can apply this very same mindset into the financial arena as well. To say, okay, this is where I want to go. So now it's about like puzzling, like, what is the way to get there? And that I really appreciate. And as you said, still combined with the curiosity.
Yeah.
Where if I didn't respect that, I would very quickly kill my spirit if I don't respect where I really want to go. And if I don't respect the financial piece, it's just not going to be sustainable, because I won't be able to create from spirit anymore if I just cannot live off it. Like, yeah.
Just a second, your camera just went off focus. Maybe probably just turn it off and on.
Yeah.
Nice.
Is it better now?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Nice. Great. Are there any other kind of obstacles, challenges that made it hard for you to follow that vision of like being able to comfortably cover all your family's expenses with this kind of following your excitement, following what felt really alive to you? Like, I heard this kind of this complexity piece, like just threads in many different directions. Are there any other roadblocks that were present for you that made it hard to see maybe how you could reach that, or that just places that you met repeatedly of like, fuck.
I mean, the way the question just, is being framed, as I think about it, is more like, what did support me that it wasn't there before? And I think another piece has really to do with clarity. Like, to put that clarity into sort of a resonant space. So to share it with you, it's not just something that I have by myself halfway thought through, but I share it. There's questions coming back that partially I cannot answer, but that are just an invitation to like, okay, look deeper. Like, what is it? How do you want to answer these in numbers? Like, so that piece was also really powerful for me, where I think part of it was not being super clear on what exactly are the expenses? What is my average monthly income? If I look back on the past 6 months, from the types of work that I want to offer, how many coaching clients for what price range, how many workshops for what income, like, just really doing the maths into the details and checking back with someone, in that case, you, like, does that sound realistic even, that for me was a tremendous support as well. Yeah. So I guess if I look from a point of view, what were roadblocks? It's this piece of not being really clear in the details. I
love that. I think it's like there's a certain vulnerability in bringing in like precision in a way and numbers, rather than like just like a general kind of well, this would be nice. There's something vulnerable about becoming that clear, but it also really sharpens something. And then you can much easier say, am I moving in the right direction or not? Am I getting closer to that or not?
I like the vulnerability piece that you were just talking into, because it is like super vulnerable to share it with someone, with you in that case. And then also, so I'm trying to grasp it, but it has something with, like, at first seeing the numbers, I was shocked is a bit too much, but like a part of me really collapsed. Because seeing it, I was noticing, okay, it means my coaching is probably needing to be more expensive to be sustainable. And second, seeing the numbers of people that I would need and the income from workshops, it's like, okay, that's a bar like to reach. Like, it's much easier to stay in the realm of like, yeah, I will get there. It feels like I'm moving in the right direction, but not having the clarity. And then like seeing it very clearly, it's like a, like a checkup, a doctor's checkup. Like you get to see what's working and what not in your body, like working. And at first it may be a bit like, oh, wow. But then it also gives you the ground to move from. Like, it's like, okay, this is where I'm standing. This is where I want to move towards. And then I can start playing and researching and trying. Like, And for me, like the money piece, we did a little bit of that in our sessions, but also what it just brings up is it's so closely connected for me to questions of self-worth. Like, am I enough? Is my work good enough? Will people really pay that? Like there's a whole layer of that also for me in the money piece. So yeah, it's vulnerable.
Nice. So looking, either maybe from this moment, maybe that's a good moment from like starting to do the numbers, and maybe this like first, discomfort that might bring up to where you are now by the end of our working together. Just what stands out in terms of things that have moved or shifted.
I'm just laughing because it sounds like the perfect sales pitch, what I'm going to say. And it's true. Yeah, I mean, what I want to say before, just to put a frame to it, it's not that this is something that I can see reliably repeat itself over the next few months now. And there's two things. First is I really see how overall the process is really moving towards the numbers that I want them, like how I want them to be like. That's the overall. And the perfect sales pitch thing is that from end of July until end of August, for the work that I do, I will earn as much money as I haven't earned before with work that I really want to do. With the coaching clients, with the couples counseling, with the workshops that I'm having right now. It's like, part of me is still not completely trusting that this is really happening. It's like, wow, this feels rich, like not necessarily on a financial level also, but rich in terms of something relaxes in me. Yeah. Does that answer your question? I'm not exactly sure what the...
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't looking for anything in particular. Just curious what stands out. Could you give people just like an approximate comparison between what you would like the income that would come usually, and then either this month or maybe the last few months on average, just just so people can get a bit of an image of like what's the ratio.
So I don't have the average income for the last few months in mind, so I can give like what we calculated to start with. If I think about that, I remember that number, like when you asked me in the beginning to reflect upon the 6 months before we met. And now it's actually like it doubled and even a little more, like for this month. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's super awesome. And we did talk on our last session about this, like to establish a trend line.
Yeah.
To kind of like to really celebrate this month that was super successful. To really let it sink in, like, boom, this feels awesome. And then like finding the right balance between, okay, so I'm seeing a trend, it's going in the right direction, but also not expecting like, and this will continue exactly like this. Like, I know this experience so well that like after a really good month, often comes a little dip. And it's like when I know that, and I don't have to be surprised, and I can also calculate. So I don't increase my expenses 1 month after my best month, because chances are that that's not going to be my average.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And there's one piece that I want to mention that is surging these last 2 days. Like our last session was just 2 days ago when we had this sort of like sinking in celebration movement, and it really gave space to that. And what I so enjoy, like we've just been talking about numbers and money, and there's layers that this affects me on the inside. And one of those is that I'm actually touched to notice that there is a trust growing in me. Like, there's 2 or 3 projects that I've been collecting in my project vault and nourishing over the last year or so, where I just take notes of like, anything that may be relevant to that project. And I have not taken on any of these. And it feels like with the financial piece moving, something inside can relax enough and start trusting that I actually can take on projects with a different and, in my view, bigger impact of what I want to create an impact in the world. Yeah. And I really enjoy noticing that. Like, yeah, oh wow. It's as if it opens up my perception and like, okay. Yeah. It's as if what comes now, it's as if with this money piece, there almost always is a certain level of survival stress in my system, depending on how my internal forecast and the external numbers are. And the less there is from the survival stress, of course, like my system relaxes and opens, and I'm in a space to envision taking on other projects that move forward my vision even more into the world.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful way of picturing this. When you really start taking care of the financial piece, there's so much more space for creativity and for trying things out, because as you say, like there's a certain level of trust. There's a certain base that, you know, like, okay, you know, my monthly income will vary, but it's like, it's not like between 0 and X, but it's like, yeah, I have experience that, like, and I have things coming in. So then there's like more, yeah. Like, I mean, we obviously, like, we both have different kinds of therapeutic backgrounds, but this, like, when there's a base, there's also more possibility for expansion and sustainable expansion, not one that lapses back into like feeling terrible, but like, yeah. Oh. I'm really curious to hear what you would say to someone who is in a situation that you were in maybe about half a year ago, like in this process of really doubling down on self-employment and following your calling of what you really want to bring to life. Like, is there something that, like, you would recommend to them? Or I'm not asking you to tell them to work with me.
Take coaching with David.
But like, if they're unsure how to approach all of this, what would you say to them?
Yeah, there's two threads coming. Can I take a little space on these, or yeah? So one that I understand ever more deeply how essential it is. It's like cultivating one's capacity to move from self-connection, like from inner resource. I think that for me is the most essential piece. Like, to, on whatever the goal is, wherever I'm heading towards, this constant check back. Am I still in touch with my nervous system, with how I am doing right now? Am I aware of my body as I am moving? And if I'm not, what are the resources that I can call upon, or that I can use? Be it like sort of somatic resources in movement, be it people to call upon, friends, or your support system. Like, just because the more I practice, the more I notice that sort of a continuum, the deeper I move from self-connection, the more it's likely that what I create will actually contribute to life. Yeah, so that is one, like, for me, the centerpiece in creation, in relationship, in life. Like, what do I need to again and again come back to a really like felt sense, an embodied sense of I'm safe and I'm moving from fullness here. Like, And the second piece is something that I mentioned to you in our last call also, that hit me when I read it a couple of days ago. It makes so much sense. There was someone, I don't exactly remember where it was, but it was someone saying, like, if you don't have an amount of support around you that actually triggers a little bit of shame even in your system, then you don't have enough support. And I'm not constantly there, and yet I really take it to heart and try to move by that, like really seeing, okay, how can I create support structures that feel really nourishing? Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, I like the two also in combination. It's like the more I move from a place of self-connection, acknowledging that I will definitely not always be there, like not to make it stand still until I have full self-connection, but just increase. And then just the amount of support and resources that are needed to be able to operate from this. I think that's powerful.
Yeah. And to also, for me, you know, that is a like it almost calls up on a bit of a trickster energy inside, because it's so, for me, it's so lush and playful, that space to hold that in my awareness, that, you know, wherever I'm moving, be it in my creation or in my close relationships, whenever there's a moment of challenge where I may lose self-connection, if I am able to create enough resources, I can take it as something that I can step by step, you know, metabolize and eat up, sort of. I have this image of a black hole again and again, that is sort of, you know, something's coming. And if I have the equal amount of resources, then the challenge is just something that I can metabolize and sort of digest and learn from. And then it becomes more and more part of my structure and my grounding as I move forward again. Like, I'm definitely, I just want to name that, not in a continuous sense of self-connection. And I try then to create resources enough so that the important places where I notice I go on autopilot and I just become reactive, that there is something to kind of reintegrate these moments. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. So, having arrived at where you are now after working together, what's next for you?
I noticed that right now there are like different pieces possible. And from what we've been talking about before, it really feels like right now, and it's interesting that it so correlates to the end of this cycle of collaboration that we had, or support that I received from you, is that there really is this moment of celebrating, sinking in, and not yet being clear on what exactly to pick up on next. And it feels like such an important break, you know, and it doesn't feel like a passive break. I'm not just like gone. It's more like, yeah, I really need to rest. And I really hold the different possibilities inside that may come up next. And I see how are they evolving as I hold them, but without following through right away.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's different lanes that are like showing up, and I'm not sure yet exactly where to go next. Yeah. And the overall direction for sure has to do with this question of what is a way forward to get my offerings and my work more widely spread that really feels good to me also, where I'm, you know, as much as possible in relationship with people, and yeah, still also work on growing the amount of people that I reach with what I offer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, you having said this, like it's a moment of breathing out and harvesting, celebrating. Yeah, which feels really important to, yeah, take this time to also update to a new reality of like, oh, like really letting it sink in of like, okay, this is where I'm at right now. Rather than like operating from the same place that you maybe were like half a year ago or a year ago, which is so easy to do. This fast world is like not noticing that like certain parts in us still operate from a different reality, and then to really slow down and be like, wait a second, like we talked about this in the last session, is to just see the momentum that's already there. And yeah, that it really takes slowing down to fully take it in. It's like, oh, it's true. Yeah, there is already a lot happening. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. And just on a practical level, that's what I actually wanted to say is like, yeah, you are taking this time, but at the same time, like there are lots of workshops coming up that are already out. Yeah, that if you like, I'm very happy to put in the whatever description, show notes, people to check out. So yeah, there's stuff coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for naming that. Yeah, absolutely.
Nice. Yeah, just last thing that I'm curious about. Just to name the threads that were most kind of present for me that I heard in your answers, like what you've been taking with you from this time of working together, is clarity, like really looking at things, yeah, like in a very practical way to become clear of like, what are the goals that I want to reach with my work? And then also figuring out the different puzzle pieces of offers and so on, so that you can actually reach that rather than just having kind of a vague idea and potentially never meeting the goal, because the way you set things up, it might at least become very hard to like add up together. So like that's a big piece.
Yeah.
Can
I say something to
yeah,
that?
sure.
Just reminds me of something that you said in one session, and like just for listeners and viewers to know, he didn't say it to me directly, but there's this phrase of, it was kiss, and there's two meanings of it, and one is keep it simple, stupid. And that's sort of like one piece that I so appreciate around the way that you do show up is that, like, oftentimes I came to sessions and I had all these questions prepared, and, you know, this list of, okay, these are the things that I'm sort of struggling with and that feel like stopping points right now. And then there were times where just how you related to me in these moments that showed me what a very simplified version and answer could look like. And I really love that, because I think being on the inside of creating what's dear to your heart, I at least so easily get lost in the nuances, you know, because all of it is so important to me that my capacity to prioritize is kind of confused. Like, you know, it's like I'm not seeing as clearly as, you know, when I support someone else in their processes, it's super clear. And to have that as a space where I'm being met with such simplified clarity really helped me to shape things inside myself, like to be clear, okay, these are the core pillars that I need, and this is the simplified version to create them, and the more beautiful version with all the extras and colors can come on later, but these are not the essentials for now.
Yeah.
So that is a capacity that I really appreciate that you brought to our space. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. That would have been the second thing I would have said. It's like I would have said something like helping you direct your energy in the places where like it really made a difference, something like that. Like to really move the needle and actually like start seeing results, because that's what we need to keep going. If we're like always in this like kind of complex creative process of like, yeah, everything is kind of cooking. There's times where that's fine, but like there are also moments where it's really important. I know this so well, like where I need to see results, like to know like, am I going in the right direction or not? And I think this is something that creatives in general can really get lost in, like just like not looking for like really direct feedback and putting something out and seeing if there's resonance without making it super pretty, but like, hey, this is my idea. What's the resonance? This is my one-on-one offer. Does someone respond? And I think they're just, as you said, like, I feel like so many of the things that you did and that we talked about, it was so simple, like such simple steps. But yeah, that can really make a difference because results are showing up, and then you can keep on going and you can keep on adding, and you can like, your creativity actually gets more space. That's kind of the paradox. That like if you start simply, your creativity gets space eventually with a base of like, yeah, and like I can take care of myself. This is not like this like some crazy idea that you have and you're like, this has to work because next month, you know, I'm not going to be able to pay my expenses. Like, okay, I have a base, and then from there I can try things out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so having named these two, I'm curious if there's anything else that you want to share about our experience. Like, you know, didn't get space so far in our conversation, something that feels worth.
And there's two elements that come to mind. One is this, you know, with how we set up the coaching container, and my assumption is that you do that with most people, is that we have the sessions where we meet one-on-one online, and there's this option to be in touch in between, like exchanging messenger messages. And just like also connecting that to something that you just said, just using that as a space also to receive feedback. And like the value of that is incredible. Like it's so small to just send you, you know, I don't know, a link tree that I created and get back a few elements of what comes up for you as you look at it. And that's so powerful. Like this feels like a constant small iterations, like that are moving and moving and moving. And besides the very concrete, it's just this also knowing that it really feels like someone having my back that I really enjoy. It's like, oh yeah. There's this, again, speaking to resource, there's something in my system that calms down and can, you know, take wiser decisions from the interactions we have But it's almost as if just knowing that we are in the process relaxes something, that there is an option to fall back onto, already shifts my inner experience. It's like, oh yeah, okay. And lets me take wiser decisions. Like,
yeah.
And the other thing that came up, and we touched upon it, but that I really want to mention is that I'm so grateful for, you know, for me, our space was mainly, not only, but mainly focused really on the creative and external part, you know, and moving forward the needle on these issues that we were mentioning. And I want to name, sort of to really complete the picture, that throughout the last years, I really created a very nourishing surrounding for myself to be in. Like, there are people that I can call upon when there are inner processes surging. And that's for me just inevitable that this is happening when I move out there with my own creations. And I want that to be also clear, you know, that this is sort of part of the riverbed that enabled for me to also move that simple and fast with you, is that there is all of these support structures. Like, you know, when something surged and I was, I don't know, triggered into shame because I showed up with something that wasn't well received, be it written or a workshop offering, like that takes time to take care for it well. Like, so that is sort of also work that is for me part of that journey, where there are, like, luckily people in my field that I can have such type of support with. Like, yeah.
Nice. Yeah, cool. Yeah, thank you for taking the time and sharing. Yeah, you know that, but I really appreciate the work that you're doing. And yeah, I feel satisfied having been able to support you in a couple of steps, just bringing that work more out. And yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Cool. Stop with this recording.